Recently, I had an experience with credit card fraud that caused so much unnecessary stress and anxiety. I spent hours on the phone and in chats with my credit card company. I had to get two different cards before the fraud stopped, and I was so worried about what was going to happen to my money in my bank account. And I sometimes have the fear that it's going to happen again, right? And that's why I'm so excited to introduce You Are the Healer's newest sponsor, Aura, an app for protecting online data and personal information. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access things like my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Protecting yourself and your personal information is a form of self-care, I swear. Go to my sponsor, aura.com/healer to get a 14-day free trial and have peace of mind knowing your information is safe. Again, that's Aura, AURA.com/healer for your 2-week free trial.
You Are the Healer is sponsored by BetterHelp. Therapy is mandatory because there's absolutely nothing wrong with seeking help. I think every person who walks this earth needs therapy, honestly. I'm stoked to be connected with BetterHelp to offer affordable and accessible therapy resources. The link is in my show notes, and you can also go to betterhelp.com/healer. That's better, HELP.com/healer. Now let's get into this episode.
Hi, besties. Before we dive into the episode, I just want to provide a quick disclaimer. You Are the Healer is here for empowerment, storytelling, and those aha moments, but it is not a substitute for therapy, medical advice, or professional help. I'm sharing my experiences, education, and opinions to support you, not to diagnose you. Everything you hear on the show is for informational and educational purposes only. You are responsible for your own choices, healing journey, and how you apply what resonates. If you need deeper support, please reach out to a qualified professional that can support you on your healing journey. All right, disclaimers done. Let's dive into this episode. Welcome back to You Are the Healer. I'm so stoked to introduce another guest episode. I have Julija Lemenaite on with me today. Julija, thanks for taking the time to be on the show. Julija is a ADHD, she's the founder of ADHD Beatmakers, which is such a sick program that I'm definitely going to have you talk about because I think it's so dope. So thanks for taking the time to be on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And I also love what you're doing so much. And I know it's making a big impact to the community. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
Yeah, of course. So let's just dive right into it. I would love for you to talk a little bit about your experience with your mental health and share a little bit about your mental health journey throughout your life.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I grew up as an immigrant here. So I grew up in a country called Lithuania, which is a tiny country in Eastern Europe, right in between Poland and Latvia. And my parents grew up in war zone times and when, communism was happening and all these things. So I really didn't have any grasp of what proper mental health was because growing up, therapy was like X, talking about your feelings, X, crying, X. Basically anything that showed emotion was like not really accepted in my household. And I always knew that there was something wrong with like the family dynamic growing up because my dad was like an alcoholic. My mom had a lot of mental health issues. And then I was like undiagnosed, super ADHD kid, like energy everywhere, highs and lows. I was somebody that was also an empath and didn't know it. So I would cry a lot. And I would always be like kind of ridiculed for being who I was. And I couldn't understand why. But I also knew that something in my family was not right. And it always came down to mental health. So I moved out of my house when I was like in my early 20s and my mental health improved so much. I love my parents. God bless them. They only knew what they knew, right? And they only know what their parents taught them. But I didn't realize that growing up in an immigrant family where mental health is never talked about and it's always something that I had to push to the side. I really got to actually take control. So I saw a therapist for a couple years. I started getting into coaching, right? And then I finally got diagnosed and I got evaluated for ADHD. So I got diagnosed as like a combination type, which is both hyperactive and inattentive. And I remember like the nurse practitioner being like, yo, how did you go this many years? Because I was about like 27 when that happened. And I was like,
yeah, I was just wondering the same thing. I'm like, wow, how did that, how did you go that long?
For sure. So then I'm thinking too, like a little bit about like my background. I went to nursing school for 5 years. And so, you know, like thinking at it now, I'm like, damn, how did I survive college without like medication or anything like that? But now I'm happy because I have learned to use my ADHD too. I know it's so corny, but it's so true too. It's like superpowers and advantages. I very, very rarely take my medication. It's not a daily thing anymore for me. So there's a lot of things that I've learned about how to really use it to my advantage and to my growth. And because I got diagnosed, I was able to shift my coaching practice into something that was way more dialed in, niche, and it also really correlated with my love of the electronic dance scene, and where, you know, there's a lot of neurodivergent people flocking around in the crowds and behind the decks. So it really just made sense for me to go down this career path now. And it's been so awesome.
Yeah, totally. So it's almost like this thing that was hard to navigate early on in your life showed up exactly for a reason, so that you could be doing what you're doing now and like helping out people who have similar brains like yours. And yeah, the neurodivergence in the EDM scene is, the overlap is like, I always joke that the Venn diagram is just a circle because there's so much overlap that everybody's just neurodivergent.
100%. 100%. And also it does make me mad though sometimes, like when people say like, oh, like everybody has ADHD, but there is such a difference between like thinking that you have it and actually getting diagnosed, right? And also we live in a society where we have the most amount of dopamine like available, right? Between doom scrolling and, you know, everything else that's a distraction. So I think people can view like social media addiction as like, oh, I have ADHD, but ADHD is truly a neurodevelopmental disease, and it starts in early childhood. It starts before your brain is even fully developed. So there is huge distinctions between actually struggling with it and then just having an inattentive issue because you're addicted to your phone.
Okay, I'm so glad that you touched on this because, yeah, I think a lot of people, they just throw on, oh, I have ADHD, or like, oh, I'm neurodivergent, but like they've never seen a doctor, they've never been prescribed. And there's a lot of misinformation going around because, like you said, we're like a dopamine fueled society. Doom scrolling, the food that we eat, like it just, everything is like dopamine to the face. And so of course we have inattentive issues because we're getting bombarded with all of these neurochemicals all the time. Whereas like you were saying, ADHD is something that like, as you are growing up, it is a developmental thing in your brain. And so like a lot of people have struggled with attention right now because of TV and all of the things, but having ADHD, that's a whole other thing because it comes with, you know, the inability to regulate your emotions, the procrastination piece. Like there's so many aspects of ADHD that aren't just the inattentive piece.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And also just like the dysregulation of like emotions and, you know, the task paralysis. And a lot of people confuse things like even task paralysis with laziness. Like I remember growing up, tying back to my family, they would always make me feel really bad if I like couldn't clean my room or I couldn't clean my car and maintain like a clean space. And I later found out later in my life, like it wasn't because I was a lazy person or I wanted to be messy. Like my brain struggled with initiation of tasks and I never had a proper healthy way to understand that or cope with it. And now I have obviously tons of information behind my belt. I've done so much like self-work and healing on like realizing when those thoughts pop up and how to overcome those. But again, it's like two different things, you know? And I also did a lot of research, and it ties into my own childhood, that a lot of people that have ADHD as well, it stems from like early trauma and growing up in really chaotic and stressful, harsh environments, AKA why also a lot of immigrants have ADHD and don't get diagnosed until later in their life because the concept is just foreign to them, but it's something that does have a very strong genetic component.
Yeah, totally. And I love that you touched on that because I've looked into ADHD a bunch myself just because I think it's so interesting. But a lot of like early childhood trauma shows up the same way in your frontal lobe as ADHD. So it's like, is it the ADHD or the childhood trauma? And like they manifest the same way. And it's like the trauma can cause the ADHD or they can have exactly like similar symptoms. So it's really interesting. And yeah, I love that you touched on how a lot of immigrants have this because, you know, the trauma that comes from immigration and moving over and the culture difference. And so I'm really glad that you touched on that. And then honestly, I'd love to hear a little bit more of like what the transition was like for you coming, you know, to America and growing up with like the culture difference.
So that was something that was always really interesting. So like I have a sister that's 10 years older than me. So I grew up basically here still because I was about a year and a half. I was like an infant when I came here versus my sister was like 11 and a half, just starting middle school, had to go through the ESL, English as a second language program.
Wow.
Right. And so even though Lithuanian is my first language, all of my schooling from kindergarten to the end of college was all English. I don't have an accent. I grew up with American friends, but I always felt this like cultural, I forget the word for it. There's a TED talk about it, but essentially how like you feel like you're kind of stuck in between two worlds. So, you know, at home I was one way and I had one personality, and then at school I had another personality, and I could never really like blend the two. When I was like, you know, younger, I got made fun of like the foods I would bring to lunch, because it wasn't like normal American food. It was like, you know, beetroot and, you know, different things that people here did not like experience cuisine wise, right? So even stuff like that, when you're like a shy, embarrassed little kid that's going through puberty, you don't know why people are laughing, or even the clothes I used to wear, right? That was something that a lot of people couldn't understand. And it also really made me very upset, like even the simple things of like going to a grocery store, because my parents both have very heavy accents. Really struck a nerve with me growing up and seeing like how ignorant a lot of people are to people that come from different countries or that are immigrants. So that always played actually a really negative role in my mental health, because I started to kind of be in between two worlds. Like, oh, like, are people from America just like shitty? Like, should I just hang out with like my Lithuanian friends? Like, you know what I mean? Like as a kid, you don't really understand. And I always felt like so bad for my parents and all of like, you know, the stuff they had to go through really to just like accommodate. So again, in between two worlds all the time, in between two cultures. And only now I'm finding like my blend, and it's really helping my mental health actually because of the EDM scene as well. I met a lot of other like Lithuanian girls, and I met just obviously other people from different countries. And I feel like even that is so healing to my soul, because I feel like it's not the best thing for your mental health to kind of forget where your cultural roots are, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally. Like the mental health implications of assimilation and trying to blend in and like not stand out, but then you're losing, you know, this touch with your culture and your family roots and where you come from. And so I can imagine this like middle ground is really, especially as a kid, I feel like very distressing to be in. This is not quite as similar, but I grew up for a couple of years in Singapore. And so so when I was in kindergarten until third grade, I lived in Singapore, and I moved from Texas to Singapore back to Texas. And I was young, so I was like a sponge. So I thought I was learning so much about all these other cultures. I was learning Mandarin, like all this stuff. And then I come back to Texas, and everyone's like, Texas is the best place to be. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, where else have you been to like have that opinion? Because I was like 8, you know? And they're like, oh, I've never left. And I'm like, how can you say that this is the best place to be if you've literally never even left the state? And because I was so young and it was only a couple of years, it wasn't like this huge thing, but it was very much like, America does not feel like it's it for me. And seeing everybody around me like be so about it and like uncultured and really shunning and rejecting other people's culture. I think culture is so beautiful and wonderful, and like we can all learn and share from each other. And to grow up in like a small town in Texas that like bullies people for being different, I'm just like, that is actually crazy. Because at my school in Singapore, we like embraced every religion, like everyone had food from everywhere, and it was so dope. And so to go from that environment back to like small town Texas, I was like, oh God. So I feel you on that, like the staggering difference between those two environments.
It is,
you know?
so major, but that's so cool that you had that like unique perspective and experience, because that's all life is, right? And I feel like a big part about mental health is like opening up your perspective. So like whether it's traveling, being, you know, accustomed to other cultures, or just learning about somebody's culture. Like I think one of the best things somebody can do, whoever's listening, like if you grew up in like one style of way and you felt like you're kind of maybe have been, I don't even want to use the word ignorant. I guess it's kind of harsh, but not like so open to other cultures. Like just try when you meet somebody of a different, you know, whatever, just like strike a conversation. It doesn't have to be weird. Be like, hey, what was your childhood like growing up? Like, that's not, you know, the weirdest question, you know, or just be like, hey, what kind of foods did you eat growing up? And there's so much you can learn from other people. And again, the people that I think that don't, you know, really travel or get out of their box are the most constricted. And it's just unfortunate to see, to be honest. Like I have people from my high school that have never left, you know, Illinois, which is where I'm from. And I'm like, yo, how can you possibly think, you know, that your culture is the best, you know? Yeah.
This is it. Yeah, right. Yeah, totally. Okay. I want to kind of jump back to what you were talking about with ADHD symptoms and how you've learned to manage them. I would love for you to just share some wisdom about, because it sounds like you don't take meds very often, but you do have a lot of tools and strategies for how to manage your ADHD. So I would love to hear your tips and tricks.
For sure. So one thing that I love the absolute most, and it ties to like a very real concept, which is object impermanence, which means If you don't
Yep.
see it, it doesn't exist in your world. And this actually has to do with people too. So people always forget, like, that doesn't have to do just with like, you don't see your phone, so you forget about your phone. I've had times in my life where I have like completely like lost relationships with people, like my long distance friends, because I'm just like, okay, I don't see them. I even forget that like they're around. Like, I know it sounds really screwed up, but it's a thing.
Yeah.
So I think the best thing you can do with like object permanence is to A, track everything down, and B, make as many things that are able to be in your visual vicinity like open. So the most common places you can like keep lists or reminders, you know, like the craziest places that normally people wouldn't do it. Like, I don't keep stuff in like a to-do list book. My house looks like crazy, right? I have it on the fridge. I have it on my mirror in my bathroom. I have it right above, like on my ceiling where I sleep, right? So it's like, no matter where I look at these common places, my car, mirror, right? I'll write myself little reminders or to check in with certain people or remember really important priorities. And when I'm trying to build habits, this is also very, very helpful. Like, I used to not have a consistent skincare routine. And if I wouldn't see my skincare products, right, I just wouldn't do it. So in addition to that, to help me like remember that, that's where the, you know, notes on the mirror started happening. And I would just keep a sticky note. Hey, don't forget you want to do this, right? And then attached to that, it's pretty nice to write like a why or a reward. So, you know, like for my mirror, I would write, don't forget your skincare because you want to glow and be happy, right? Or if it's like the whole friend impermanence thing, okay, don't forget to text Rachel because she was your, you know, college bestie and it's good to keep in touch. Like, I write myself little notes like that too, because then my brain does get that dopamine and that reminder, like, hey, there is a purpose behind this. Because when you have really severe ADHD, if you can't see an end goal to your deadline or like why that thing is so vital or priority, you're going to push it away until it just, you don't do it anymore. You don't text that person ever again.
Yeah, totally. I love that. So having in your visual field the constant reminders of those things that you want to do, because yeah, I struggle with this object permanence so bad. I'm like, if I don't see my friends for a week, I'm like, do I have friends? Like, it's crazy.
Exactly.
It's really crazy. And so even like, as you're saying that, I'm like, oh, like having pictures around of like the people that maybe are far away that you don't get to see as often, just like those reminders. And then I love that you pair it with the why, because I think that's a big thing when it comes to creating habits and creating change and motivation is like, okay, sure, skincare, but like, what's in it for me? Because the short term, it's not fun. You know, it's kind of like, it's a task, it's a chore, but then it's like you have that why to constantly remind you to motivate yourself to keep the habit up. So I love that. That's
absolutely. And then I think the second thing I could add in, and this is pretty short and easy, but can be a huge game changer, is the whole concept like beating time blindness. So time blindness is when you are unaware of the amount of actual time that has passed doing a certain task, right? So it can either be severely higher, severely lower. Like, I remember, like, if I would, when I got my first apartment, I would look at my laundry and be like, this is going to take me 4 hours. I would literally just put this idea in my brain, like, by the time I fold it, by the time I do this. And the reason that time blindness exists is because when you have ADHD, you don't think about the beginning task and the end task. It is exhausting to think about the micro steps, right? So it's a fun way to kind of play a game with yourself by doing a time blindness challenge. So writing down on a piece of paper, okay, how long do you think, you know, your laundry is going to take or your chores or whatever? And then actually setting a timer, making it like a game, and then writing down the actual amount spent for that task. And it's so staggering to see like your own data. When I first started this challenge, my old therapist recommended it for me. I was like, holy shit. It was like everything. It was like opposite. Everything I thought would take long would take short. Everything I thought was short would take twice as long. So it's fun to be able to make that data yourself.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love this. I've actually been seeing videos of this online of like, this girl has her friend and she's like, how long have you been procrastinating this task? It's like organizing your bathroom or something. And they're like 3 years. And they're like, how long do you think it's going to take? At least 7 hours. And they're like, total time, 45 minutes, you know, like, right. And it's like, you've been procrastinating this for so long because you think it's going to be like this whole event. And yeah, like you said, usually the things you expect to be longer are shorter and the things that you expect to be shorter are longer. Like my time blindness is like, if I'm cooking breakfast, I'm like, oh, 5 minutes, I'm good. Like, and I love to cook, right? And then I'm late to everything because I underestimate how long it's going to actually take me. And yeah, the things that I think are going to like cleaning, I hate cleaning, I hate doing the dishes. Those things, actually, it's like 5 minutes. Like it's such a short amount of time, and making it a little game is so fun. I can even see this being like a
video series of like, here's the task I've been procrastinating. I think it's going to take this long. Let's time it, you know? And then it's having that data is like, okay, so I don't know. That'll be helpful for the future.
100%.
Okay, I love that one.
Timers are my best friend. I think without timers, there would be a lot of areas in my life that I would really struggle in, especially running a business and stuff like that. You really have to be like super on top of your time management. So yeah, timers are key.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the Pomodoro technique, I think is how you say it, where you just like start a timer and whatever task you want to do, you're like, okay, for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, I'm just going to start a timer and I'm going to do it. And then whenever the timer goes off, I can stop. And then usually once the timer goes off, you're already so in it that you're like, I'm just going to keep going. But it tricks your brain to make it manageable.
100%.
That one's been huge for me.
That is a 100% real thing. And also there's a concept too of like doing the hardest thing first. So out of everything you need to do for the day priority wise, whichever one is like most grueling, getting that done fuels your brain with so much dopamine that everything else appears to be like easier. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've heard this saying in like business terms of like, you have to eat the frog in the morning or something crazy. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I butchered it, but it's like, do that thing that you don't want to do first, and then the rest of your day could be.
No, that is the exact thing. It's like a Latin like folklore about like eating frogs and that. Yeah, it's more easy if you just like eat it all whole than like waiting to like eat half of it or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Any other tips that have helped you manage your ADHD? What I'm thinking of specifically is like the emotional regulation piece. That is difficult for a lot of people that I know, myself included.
100%. So this is something I can definitely say is like less on my healed list, right? And compared to like time management organization, it's something that I still really struggle with. But something that has helped me immensely, because most people that have ADHD have some sort of underlying anxiety, whether it's chronic or it's like panic attack disorders. But for me, cold therapy has helped a lot. So I'm not one of those people that, God bless them, that do ice baths every day or cold showers every day, but implementing them sometimes into my routine, or even if it's just like putting a cold pack on the back of your neck because it relaxes your vagal nerve, or even just putting my hands and feet in cold water versus my whole body. I've been trying to do that a lot more in my routine, just a couple times a week, whenever I remember, whenever I feel really anxious or I feel like my emotions are heightened. And that has helped me so much. I usually pair that as well with the Wim Hof breathing method. If you've ever been introduced to the Wim Hof breathing, it's a really cool type of like breathing where you're essentially hyperventilating yourself and then forcing yourself to slow down via hyperventilation. So it's supposed to teach you, whenever you are in times of panic or stress, how to, you know, slow down your breathing, which is a huge part of emotional regulation. So the Wim Hof style breath work in comparison, or in addition to the cold therapy, has been pretty helpful for me. Also, I've been taking bee pollen, which is crazy. My dad actually recommended me to take bee pollen in like these vitamin supplements, and it really helps with focus and like regulation, and really decreases my stress, which in turn helps with my emotional bandwidth to not go from these extreme highs to lows.
Yeah, totally. Because when you're already underlined with that stress, then your likelihood to be reactive is so much higher because you have that like baseline stress already happening.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Totally. And then like the last thing that I would recommend, and it's kind of like weird to say, I guess, but like removing the problem as much as you can if it's environmental. So like really making sure that the people around you are not making you emotionally dysregulated. I just recently had to end like a friendship not too long ago that was like a year long. I thought it'd be like a lifetime type of thing. And I realized this person was really making my anxiety levels like really bad. And so there was a lot of, you know, moments in my life, even before her, where I'm like, okay, are my partners making me emotionally dysregulated? Are my best friends like emotionally dysregulating me? Even the people I go to raves with, tying back to EDM, like everyone really has to me now in my life, like be, you know, aligned with like the type of like energy I want to be on, or else I can really pick up on their fear and their stress and their anger. And then it makes me feel all over the place, if you know what I mean.
Totally. Yeah. And going back to you saying that like you are an empath, like you pick up on other people's energy, good or bad. So it's so important in general to surround yourself with really awesome people, especially if you're energetically sensitive and you can pick up on a lot of things. Because if you're around people that are stressed out, anxious, all over the place, then you're going to pick up on that. And so it's really important to be picky about who you surround yourself with, but it also sucks because you have to say goodbye to people and you have to be protective of your energy, but like no one else is going to do that for
Absolutely.
you.
And like, shout out to whoever who is listening. If this like resonates for you, like it is not selfish in a bad way to, you know, say goodbye to friendships that are hurting you mentally. You know, like there's so many points in your life where I feel like that reflection is actually really empowering. And then if anything, it leaves room for people that are more aligned with you to step into your circle.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. It's like whenever it's so corny, like the corniest saying, but whenever one door closes, another one opens. But that's how it is in relationship. And I've been reflecting a lot on like impermanence of everything, just like kind of studying a little bit of like Buddhism and stuff. And so like all relationships are impermanent. They all have a start and they all have an end, and it's natural for things to like ebb and flow. And so that's totally okay, because when things flow out, things that are more aligned for you will flow
Absolutely.
in. So I love that you shared that. Cool. Okay, I want to talk about raving now. Hard pivot. But how has your relationship with EDM and raving been a beneficial thing for your mental health? Because EDM gets, I feel like, such a bad rep, when it's literally, to me, EDM is like inner child healing. Like there's bubbles, you have little fidgets, everyone's like fully expressing themselves, anything goes, there's no judgment. So how has raving benefited or affected your mental health?
It's been so incredible for my mental health in so many ways. I love what you said, because I remember the first rave I went to, I had that exact thought as you. Like, this is just inner child healing, you know, people dressing up, costumes. I'm also somebody that like my favorite holiday is Halloween. So like being able to just like wear whatever I want. I got all my Halloween stuff in the background. I feel like it's such a beautiful way of like self-expression. And again, like the whole neurodivergence thing, I think that's why a lot of neurodivergent people thrive in this scene, is because you don't have to mask. You don't have to put up fronts. You're accepted exactly for who you are. And I think that the more that you can bring the rave energy into everyday life, like that is where even more of the magic happens, because that's where it's harder, right? So it's like when you want to be angry, you're like, okay, let me be cool. Let me be clear about this. Like, let me, you know, not react out of anger. So I've been really trying to apply how I feel there, because it is a total alternate world, as you know. I try my very best to bring that in slivers to like real life.
Yeah, totally. This reminds me of, so for people listening that don't know, the rave community is founded on PLUR, which is peace, love, unity, respect. And now they added another R, which is responsibility.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
But yeah, I've been hearing that there's now 2 Rs. But I was at Ganja White Night actually this weekend, and when they ended their set, they were like, everyone like put your hands up, whatever, and they're like, on the count of 3, say unity. We're all like, unity, you know, it was really cute. And then we got in our car in the parking lot after, and people are like trying to merge to get out of the parking lot. And my friend that was driving was like, where's that unity we were just talking about, man? So she like let other people in. She's like, man, like we're like practicing unity. But that's like bringing, you know, the vibes and the energy of the rave into that everyday life, and like making things like more whimsical and more like loving and respectful, because it's so easy to do it in that environment because everybody's doing it. It's like all love and light, you know, and then you get into the real world and there's traffic and people are being dicks to you, and you're like, okay, how can I apply this into my real life too? And like bringing that magic into the real world.
And merging that, I think, is the best way, in my opinion, to overcome. It's like the antidote to rave post-rave depression, is to just bring it in your everyday life. Because I remember when I left my first Electric Forest, shout out Forest fam, whoever's been. I remember like literally crying on the way back, not because I was happy, but because I was depressed that it was over and that like I wasn't going to feel this whimsical life that I just experienced for the first time. And then I was like, okay, let me try to shift gears. Let me try to like bring this energy just a little bit back in. And even to like, I know this sounds silly, but you'll relate, like wearing at least like some of those clothes too in real life. Like I remember I went to a party that was like non-ravey, and I was wearing like my pashmina and my pendants, and I thought that people were going to make fun of me, but in fact, it was like a topic of conversation, and everyone started talking. And there was one girl I talked to, and she was like, you know what? Like you wearing that like cool scarf, she didn't know it was a pashmina. She's like, that makes me want to wear like my clothes I've been hiding in the closet that I feel like, you know, I can't wear anywhere. And I was like, yes, dude, like wear what you want, like express yourself. So there's so many little ways to integrate.
Yeah, totally. And like you being authentic to yourself and expressing yourself in ways that might not feel like normal gives other people the permission to pull something fun out of their closet and bring the whimsy back into, you know, their regular parties, you know?
100%.
Yeah. And I totally hear the leaving a music festival, specifically Forest. Every time I leave Forest, I'm like, how can I bring this and bottle it up into my everyday life? Because it's so loving, it's so magical, it's so wonderful. And it was something about Forest, like bringing that magic back. Oh. At Electric Forest, there's this whole thing that Forest provides, right? If you're ever like down and you need chapstick and no one in your group has chapstick, you just say the Forest provides, and I promise you chapstick will find its way to you.
100%.
Or like you really need a snack and someone walks up, they're like, you want a fruit roll up? You're like, yes, I do. Like, it's so magical. It's like you can show up. My friend one year,
Yes.
she went to Forest. She showed up. She bought tickets the week of, and she showed up with just a backpack, a JanSport backpack. That's literally all she had. She was camping. It was like this whole thing, but the Forest provided. She had like the best time ever because the Forest provides. And so something that me and my friends have adopted is saying the Forest provides or the universe provides, like in our regular life. So if we're asking for something or we need something, like, oh man, the universe provides, and that thing always ends up showing up. So that's a little way that my friend group has adopted some of the EDM magic into our daily
that is
lives.
so epic. And I love that. And it is such a real thing. And like, you know, just being there too, like I just watched an interview with Subtronics and he was saying how he's also ADHD, how bass music specifically within the big subgenre of electronic music feels like this like wave of dopamine electricity buzzing through your body. I was like, that's such a good way of describing it because it really is that. And I feel like, you know, people that are in the bass scene, specifically, right? Like you think the music is so, maybe to an outsider, so like weird and different and wonky and blah, blah, blah. But it's like you talk to the people in the crowd and they are the biggest sweetie pies in the world.
Yes. Me and my friends say the heavier the bass, the sweeter the human. Usually. Like going to like a Lost Lands crowd. So like Lost Lands is like this big bass festival, right? Those people there are so freaking sweet. And like, I don't know. I just think it's interesting from the outside looking in. If you're not in the rave scene, it's like, whoa, that's like really intense and heavy. And it sounds like almost like aggressive. It's like how the music sounds, but the people are so sweet. So I just think it's an interesting like thing. That
and it's so true. Yeah. And then it kind of makes, I don't know if you feel like this, when you go to other concerts, the experience is just never the same.
No, it's not. And I'm a huge concert junkie. I go to like one concert a week at least. Like I love it. And I've been having a harder time at like I call them normie shows, or like if I just go out, I'm like, oh, I'm at like a normie party, like because it's different, you know, it's not as friendly and welcoming and inviting. And so I think it's almost like our responsibility as ravers to bring that energy and sprinkle it around to these normal environments so that they can feel the plur and they can understand it. And it's like this contagious butterfly effect.
100%. And like when I went to my first Lost Lands, I remember looking out into the crowd. I was sitting at like the top of the hill by one of the dinosaurs. And I was like, you know what? I was like having this vision. I'm like, if everybody could be like this every single day, like, and you just remove the music, this is how we heal the world. Like, I was like, this is a revolutionary thought. But like, I really did like see that and feel it. And I was like, this is like the best thing ever.
Yeah, totally. And like raving being that thing that kind of like from a collective experience, I feel like raving and music festivals kind of restore my faith in humanity because I have so many positive interactions with other humans. But then you also tie in the fact that it is like inner child healing. Like I hula hoop as an adult and I love it. Awesome. Like it's so fun, you know, and it's like you're healing yourself on a certain level. And then you're also healing with other people. So you have that collective experience too. It's so wonderful. And yeah, I totally agree. I know it might sound a little like out there, but like I totally think that it will literally heal the 100%. World because it's so easy to be hopeless in our world with all of the shit going on. And then you get around other people and you're like, wait, these people are all really nice. Like these are all really positive experiences. So it's like kind of challenging the narrative that we can so easily get around humanity and kind of like where we're headed as a collective.
Absolutely. And I think it also brings back the nature of like humanity, which is that we are tribal people and we are supposed to be interacting with other people, right? Not living in isolation mode. So I think just the mere fact of being around that many human beings that are like-minded as you is already healing alone. Even like if you exited out the music, right? Like think about how many times you go to a show and even though the music's done, everyone's vibing and now there's connections being built and that's just as fun. Like,
yeah. I always say that like I would go, especially to Electric Forest. I'm like, if there's no music, I would still 100%. Be there because it's just the connection. 100%. Like it's so, I go to like the humanity circles, the yoga. It's just,
yes,
that's like my place.
It all is the best. The Giving Tree also too.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay.
I want to talk now about ADHD beat makers because I think what you're doing is so cool and it's so unique. And I would just love for you to talk about it a little bit and kind of what the impact that you've had so far has been.
Oh, for sure. So kind of like what we were talking about before, this whole like impact community, right? I was thinking about how much I loved it. And I was in a place in my mental health where I felt like really stuck about like the business I was creating because my coaching clients were not my like ideal audience. I don't know if that makes sense. And I was just kind of doing it to do it. I didn't really love it. And then I wasn't making the type of impact, the type of income, and also the type of like excitement as I thought it would bring me. And there was actually one point a year and a half ago where I was really ready to just like leave coaching and just continue with my nursing career, which felt more safe and comfortable. But then I had one night where I was actually at a show and I just had this idea. I was like, why don't I just like help people in the scene? Because so many of us are neurodivergent and so many of those people like are behind the decks, right? Like there's such a big correlation of some of the best producers and DJs in the world are neurodivergent. So I'm like, okay, what if I created like a little dialed in niche community, like within the community, and then I could market myself at these shows I go to every freaking weekend. And then it's not even going to feel like work. Like obviously I know it will take work, but it will feel so like just aligned with me. And then the second that I made my first post, I did like a Facebook group. It was called EDM Chicago. It had like, you know, like 100,000 people in it. I just did a little ad about like free coaching calls. It blew up. I got like 70 comments. I was like, oh my God. After 2 years of having like 5 clients, I was like, this is nuts. So I just decided to roll with it since then. And it's been such an upward spiral. I now have somebody that's on my team. I was a one-person business for a while, but I met through the community, somebody that opened up for Levity, a really famous like EDM duo, went to go see his set, really, you know, vibed with his mission statement. He wanted to do more coaching as a producer. And so we just collaborated forces. And now, you know, our students don't just get ADHD mindset coaching in the scene. They can also learn how to actually make their own tracks and learn more about music itself and like the logistics, the theory in the course as well.
Yeah, dope. Oh, so cool. And I love that like when you had the thought and the first thing that you did to act on it, like automatic confirmation that this is for you. Like getting that. And then something I love too, because my ideal clients are ravers too. So like I go out to rave sometimes and I literally market my podcast and my coaching because I'm like, my ideal people love heavy bass, you know, like I just love working with people and they're also neurodivergent and like stuff like that. So it's so cool to combine like the things that you love and something you're good at that can deeply help people. And so it's like, of course, but it was like automatic confirmation because like that's so clear that like that's the route that you need to be
100%.
going, you know?
And something that was really cool too, which is showing me that like my, you know, like my name for myself is actually getting out there more. I was at Wonky Willa this past weekend. And actually my production mentor in Beatmakers was actually opening up for him. So I was like, I gotta go and support. And then I was like near the bar and I was like getting a water refill. And then I had somebody like tap my shoulder and then they showed me their phone and they had like my sticker on their phone case. And I like don't even remember this person. And they're like, oh, somebody gave it to me like the last show. They passed on your sticker. Because I remember like just giving it out to random people. And I was like, wait, what? And then somebody else came up to me and they're like, hey, like I'll buy one of your hats. And like they literally paid me $30 more than what I was selling the hat for. And they're like, we believe in you, just like keep going. And I was like, this is my market of people, you know, like this is what it's all about.
So cool. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that. Yeah. So generous too. Like they're just, ravers are just the sweetest. Oh my gosh.
People in the world. So it's been really cool to see like how much it's grown. I have like a online school community where everybody hangs out and that's a place for, you know, people to have access to the course. But I also have a Discord that just like started as well, which is another way for people to continue hanging out in the community as well.
Yeah, cool. Well, and I'm happy to put all of those links in the show notes so that people listening can click and join.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to pivot to our checkout questions. They can be like 1-word answers or they can be a little bit longer, but these are questions that I ask all of my guests as we start to like wrap up our episode. So what is something that people often get wrong about you?
I think that people often view me as like being put together just because I'm a coach, but I still struggle. And so I don't want to be viewed as somebody that like is trying to act perfect or is totally like, you know what I mean? So I think that's a pretty big misconception.
Yeah, it's like I think social media makes things look one way. It's like, oh, like you're so polished and perfect. And it's like I have people tell me this and I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, that is not my life at all. And I feel like I'm pretty like transparent on social media, but yeah, people can think that because you're a coach or a healer or in some type of leadership that like you have it all together. And that's like nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody has it all together. That's just like the human
Totally.
experience,
100%.
you know? Cool. What is something that you wish you could tell your younger self?
I wish I could tell my younger self that everything will work out. I know it sounds cheesy, but I always felt like there was just so many things going on like in my childhood that I never felt like I knew what the next step for me was, or I felt so like lost about my path. But no matter what, like everything did work out and like obviously led me to where I am now. So I think just not being so afraid of the far future and just taking things step by step would have been like a really great thing for me to know.
Yeah, yeah. And the amount of people that have this answer when I ask them this question is like, it's almost like every single person is like, it's going to work out. It's going to be fine because we spend so much time worrying in the present moment about like what could go wrong. And like, if you look back, it's like everything actually did work out like up until this point. And so even if something doesn't go your way, like you can pivot, you can learn something, you can like adapt basically. And I think when we're younger, it's like we don't trust that we can. And so we freak out a lot.
So true. And even like when certain things on like friendships or relationships, you can still view like, what did that person bring me or what did this, you know, whatever. Like there's still so much to gain.
Yes. Yeah. I always say like, no matter what happens, like if you learn something from it, it was worth
Totally.
it, you know?
Totally.
If you could make a law that everyone has to follow, what would it be and why? And this can be silly, this can be serious, so take it however
I think
you
it would
want
be
to.
what we talked about, plur with the second R. Like if that was just a law to be plur, because again, that would just make people operate from such a different place in their hearts. And if we were living in peace, love, unity, respect, and responsibility, there is no way that our society would be as like yucky as it is now.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. Cool. And then what is the best mental health advice you've ever received or that you have to share?
Oh man. Okay, let me think about this one.
Yeah, this is a loaded one. You can take your time.
You know, I think it's like one of the best ones is that it's kind of like the phrase of like, if that other person, let's say, like wouldn't do that same thing for you, like don't like overextend yourself. Does that make sense? So it's like if you have somebody in your life that like, let's say like you would do X amount of things for them, but they wouldn't even like blink at the thought of doing that for you. Like, is that really a reciprocating type of friendship or person you should be around? I don't know how to word that.
Yeah. So like go where, I'm like trying to like, so like kind of go where your energy is reciprocated or like don't overextend yourself.
Yes. Don't overextend yourself.
Yeah. Love that one. Cool. And then I know we talked about your Discord and about your school community. Is there any other way that listeners can support you?
Absolutely. So just following my Instagram account at ADHD Beatmakers, and then I am going to be opening an online shop by the end of the year. So my merch as well, and then all of the proceeds from the merch just go back into running the business. So right now we have Rave Fuzzy bucket hats. We're going to have t-shirts coming out and some studio socks for producers to wear when they're in workflow. So there's going to be a lot of cool little things you guys can buy.
Nice. Awesome. Okay. Well, Julija, thank you so much for your time. I loved the whole tangents of like going from immigration to ADHD to raving. Like, I love the stream of consciousness. I know. And honestly, the most people, like the people that I interview the most, like they all have ADHD. So it's like, we're all just like tracking the thoughts.
But it all circles back to the same point at the end of the day.
It does. It does. Yes, it came back. Awesome. Well, Julija, thank you so much for being on the show, and you can support her in the comments below. Until next time, may you be well.